So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our talk, 1 million ASUS routers under control, exporting ASUS DDNS to man-in-the-middle admin credentials. My name is Masaki Kubo, and this is a joint work with my colleague, Yoshiki Mori, who is going to be present today, and also Kanta Okugawa. And we all work for Cybersecurity Research Institute of NICT Japan. Also, this is today's agenda. And so I'm going to briefly explain about why we are talking about ASUS Router today. So when we all use Wi-Fi routers at home, and when we buy a new router, maybe you turn on the power of the router, and then you connect its one interface to the internet, and then you connect your PC to the Wi-Fi network, and then open up a web browser and connect to the router's admin web UI and makes configurations, right? So you basically access your web router through the local area network and not from the internet. And I believe your router's admin page is not accessible from the internet. But however, and the ASUS router is the exception, and there are about 1.2 million ASUS routers accessible from the internet. And this number is quite outrageous compared with other vendors' router. So that's why we got interested in what is behind this situation. And there's another reason. And in Japan, this April, a police department in Tokyo, they released a security advisory about a consumer-grade residential router, which we thought quite unusual. And of course, it's written in Japanese, but if you read this advisory, they're asking the home router users to check if there's any unknown VPN settings or unknown VPN users are added. And so they're asking to check if their routers are compromised, but they are not mentioning about a specific vendor's name. So, and there were some news report about why the police released such an advisory. And the reason why they released such an advisory is that while the police were investigating some large-scale enterprise compromise where the APT is possibly involved, like the block tech, they found that the attacks were coming from those residential IP addresses of users whose router was hacked. So when we read about advisories, we thought maybe the ASUS router is also involved, and we decided we should be connecting the dots.
ASUS routers come equipped with a feature that allows access to the router from the internet. First, let me explain how this feature might inadvertently become enabled. We use a smartphone app for the initial setup, and then discover that we inadvertently expose the router's management interface necessary externally to check the connection status remotely. Pressing accept will automatically make it accessible on the internet. Could this be a possible reason why many devices can be accessed from the outside? After interviewing an NICT employee who used an ASUS router at home, it was discovered that they had intentionally set it be publicly accessible. Let's delve into explain the mechanism for connecting to the router from a remote location using a smartphone app. When you launch the app, it contacts the DDNS provided by ASUS to retrieve the router's IP address. Using the IP address obtained from the DDNS service, the app then established access over port 8443 using the TCP protocol. We considered if an attack was possible. wouldn't be possible to intercept packet by overwriting the IP address registered DDNS. Let's check the functionality of DDNS. In the DDNS feature of ASUS routers, the default domain name is generated from the router's MAC address. Next, let's explore the update method. We could have checked the firmware, but a quick Google search provided the necessary information for the update. These instructions were written for using ASUS DDNS feature with an official operating system like OpenWRT. The instruction for both indicates that a pin code input is required for the update. However, when attempting to check the error code by using a random pin code for the update, it expectedly triggers the update. This is the MAC address and pin code listed on my ASUS router. We actually use the DDNS update script. We use a different 8-digit number for the pin code. It's updated without any issue. Here's the pcap file from the update process. It's possible that only the MAC address is being checked during the update. Next, let's walk through an attack scenario and showcase a demo video. This attack requires these conditions. However, did ASUS consider making the application accessible and easy for anyone, anywhere? Before diving into step-by-step instructions, let's first introduce how to investigate the target MAC address. In this attack, obtaining target MAC address is crucial, but it's remarkably easy to acquire. The MAC address might be easy to find through brute force, but it's more efficient to check the vendor code. Hence, online search was quite effective. Let's proceed by showcasing the information discovered through online search. This is a Japanese computer-related news website where we found a MAC address listed. Upon investigating it, we found that an IP address was registered in the DDNS. This is a Japanese YouTuber reviewing an ASUS router, showing the back of the device, where we found a MAC address listed. We confirmed that even on eBay listings, MAC address listed. However, in this case, no IP address was registered in the DDNS. Thinking about exposing in the physical space, we check the BSS ID. Surprisingly, it matches the MAC address, suggesting that it might be possible to locate the target even through while driving. We will explain the actual attack method step by step. We'll override the IP address registered target DDNS with the attacker IP address. We wait for the target to launch the smartphone app. Periodically, override might be effective. When the smartphone app launches, it will receive the attacker IP address in response. The app will automatically connect to the attacker IP address. The attacker can intercept this communication to steal authentication credentials. We can receive the communication in this format by listing on 8443 TCP. We'll now demonstrate the entire process in a video.
So before going to the video, I'll explain a little bit. So the left-hand side is an attacker's console on the Google Cloud platform. And on the right screen is the ASUS Router's smartphone, and where the user launches ASUS Router App. So I want to start the demo. So the user is now connecting to his router through the Wi-Fi network. So it's a smartphone, so you don't want to connect to Wi-Fi, to the router through the internet. So now it's connecting with Wi-Fi network. And I'm going to show you the configuration of the router. So the user name is admin, and the password is Black Hat Europe 2023. And he has a DNS enabled. The DNS starts with the string A. So this is the one we are trying to hack. And now switching its smartphone to use the mobile LTE network. So now the smartphone is connected to the mobile internet network. So now, first, an attacker is checking the IP address, which is tied to the dynamic DNS FQDN. So the current registration is like this. And now, an attacker is going to use this open source ASUS DNS overwrite tool, and it needs to accept, you have to enter the PIN code, but any random digits is accepted. So we are skipping, but the address is overwritten to the one of this GCP instance, which is this. So what he has to do is just launch a web server and waiting for victim user's connection from this ASUS Router App. So he is going to start the web server and then wait for the app connection. So here, when a user launches the app talks to this attacker's server, and the app is also sending its admin credential, which is just a base 64 encoded data. So now you just decode it and can get the admin username and password. So it's really simple and straightforward. There's no tricks, but well, it's simple, but the impact is quite large. There are potentially 1 million ASUS routers susceptible to this attack.
What can an attacker do once they've compromised the router? The ASUS router includes an SSH server and VPN functionality. These might be enabled without being noticed. It features common and typical SSH server functionalities. However, as the operating system runs its volatile memory, care is required for the configuration changes. The update of the VPN functionalities could be user jump server or for intercepting a packet, among other possibilities. This vulnerability could potentially allow attackers to infiltrate without users' awareness, making it highly possible for them to make undetected configuration changes.
So as we have demonstrated, it's quite simple to rewrite the DDNS entry of ASUS, which is used by ASUS router. So we thought that if an attacker has overwritten its entry, by monitoring the DDNS record, we can probably find the attacker's overwrite of the entry. So as my colleague showed, we started to collect the ASUS router's MAC prefixes, and we ended up obtaining 20 of them. And maybe there are more, but that's what we got. And each MAC prefix has this combination of about 16 million combinations. So 20 times that combination results to 335 million combinations. But of course, there are not that many ASUS routers in the wild. So it took us about 10 days to do the forward DNS lookup of all these millions of combinations, and it resulted in only 1.6 million resolvable DDNS entry. So we decided to only monitor this number for about 3.5 months, and the resolution of the DNS lookup is only once a day because it's quite heavy, and the data we've got is quite simple. It has date and MAC address and the DNS domain, which is based on MAC address and IP address, and we also added country and AS number. So this is the result of the IP addresses we've got by country. We are only listing top 50 countries. So in the middle of June, we reached 1.6 million, where we are monitoring 20 MAC prefixes. And a vendor released an advisory on July 25th. And after that, we saw that the number of resolvable DNS entry is gradually decreasing. And if you look at the country, it seems like in the US, ASUS Router is quite popular. And this is the same statistic, but only in European countries. So Sweden is on the top, and second most popular country is UK and Russia. So as we've already explained, originally the DDNS domain was starting with A, and the domain generation algorithm was purely based on MD5 hash. But when we started to seeing the gradual decrease, we started to see this unfamiliar DNS name, which starts with B. So we did some research, and we found that the DNS domain generation algorithm was updated on ASUS Router App. So before the change, it was a quiet MD5 hash of the MAC, and with the string A added on the top. But after the change, they started to use this Unix time millisecond as a salt when they do the hashing, and they also call the hash function twice. So it's getting a little bit harder and takes more computation to guess the dynamic DNS domain. And talking about the data set, we found that those two entries where the AS has changed and the country has changed, those twos are quite interesting. And so we made an assumption that the frequent AS or country change will not occur under normal use, because it's a residential router, and unless you carry your ASUS router around the world and travel and connect its router in other country, the country will not change. And also, unless you change your contract ISP, AS will not change. And also, DDNS domain and IP address should be one-to-one relationship. And also, so this is a consumer-grade and home router. So the IP address tied to this DDNS entry should be the one of the residential internet service provider's IP address. And of course, it's an ASUS router, so the device which is behind these IP addresses should be ASUS router. So any occurrences that violates these assumptions looks suspicious. And I'm going to explain in each of those examples that we found the possible compromise or misuse of these of their DDNS system. So the first example is IP addresses that alternates, and both of them are accessible at the same time. So under normal use, the app connects to the victim's his own ASUS router, but even after the DDNS change, the ASUS router is waiting on both of these IPs. So if you look at the data, maybe in this case, victim is in China, and whenever it switches to the attacker's IP, which is in Korea, the IP address is always the same. And you could connect to both of these IPs on the port 8443, which is the ASUS's default web admin console's port. And maybe the victim is on the left, but as you can see on the Korean address, you see the same model's web UI. So maybe this is a phishing site waiting for the connection from the victim. And there are same kind of instances we found in India. So in this case, an attacker is in Indian University, and both the victim's IP and attacker's IPs are reported for the abuse. And the second example is multiple domains resolves to a single IP address. So this case is also quite suspicious, because if an attacker wants to collect many ASUS routers admin credentials, and he just needs to change the multiple DDNS entry to his attacker's IP address and wait for a connection. So there are quite a number of IPs that is registered with more than 10 domains. And this is one of the examples. This IP has about 100 DDNS entries. And if you look at the IP reputation of this IP, it's scanning the IPv4 space for the port SM445, which is SMB port, and targeted country is like this. But if the attacker is waiting for connection from the ASUS Router App, he should have this web admin port open. But when we checked, the access to this port is restricted. So maybe this attacker is really waiting for connection from a specific AS or IP address range, and from the connection from other ranges is restricted. And this is the same chart, but only in European countries. And we found an interesting one in Sweden. So this IP belongs to the data center of VPS providers, and the VPN service is also detected on this IP. And there's an abuse report about this IP for a massive crawling and possible DDoS attack. And our next example is IP address which is not over residential ISPs. So more than 1,500 domains changed to the one which belongs to BPS providers or cloud service providers such as Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Alibaba, etc. And this one is an example. Maybe in this case, victim router is in Nigeria. The IP address is residential ISP. So it looks like the real ASUS router used in Nigeria. But if you look at the DDNS entry, it starts from Hungary and then changes to University of California, San Diego. I don't know why, but it then changes to China Unicom and then Microsoft Azure Cloud. And here's another example. Also in Africa, the victim is in Kenya. But if you look at the VPN entry, it changes from Tencent to Microsoft and Collier. And from the victim's IP, we saw some abuse report, and maybe in this case, an attacker is using this Kenyan AS an ASUS router as a proxy for actually conducting attack. And we sometimes see public DNS IPs registered. Maybe it's innocuous, maybe not, but someone like us is maybe testing. And another example is also the one which is not over residential ISP's IP address, which is US Department of Defense address. So I don't know why, but more than 2,500 domains have changed to DoD's IP address at least once. So in this example, it starts from Virgin Media, one of the ISP in the UK, and then it switched to DoD's address for 4 weeks, and then changes to other ISPs in US, Google Cloud, and in South Africa, and Deutsche Telekom. So maybe DoD agent is carrying his own ASUS router and traveling around the world, but maybe we don't know. And of course, non-ASUS router is free riding this ASUS DDNS system, like Cisco routers, MicroDic router, Microsoft IIS web server, etc. So it seems like this DDNS entry is quite noisy and messy. And so we are about to finish. So as a final summary and takeaway, so the ASUS router contains an architectural flow that permits the ASUS Router App to leak admin credentials to the attacker. And about 1 million ASUS routers are still vulnerable to this attack. And before our presentation, we just checked our data of yesterday, and there are still 1.08 million DDNS domains left, so they are susceptible to this attack. And our long-term observation of ASUS DDNS revealed a potential victim of this attack and various misuse of the DDNS. So we couldn't really analyze in detail about the data set. So we are happy to share with security vendors or national SAT if you want to conduct a further analysis or investigation. And that's all for our presentation. Thank you for listening. I think we have 2 minutes left, so we can take some questions if you have.
I'm not an expert on the DNS system, but aren't there systems like reverse DNS that could be used to maybe find the IP address of the DNS name of a specific target, even with the higher entropy DNS names? And because you could also use insecure DNS. Has there been any evidence of more targeted attacks then, of people going against specific people as opposed to just sort of general scanning?
Well, yes and no. So if you know the victim's IP address, maybe if you use some reverse DNS or maybe Shodan or VT search sometimes has the host name record also recorded tied to the IP address. So maybe you can detect the target.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. I was wondering about the DDNS update. It works with the PIN code, but you could use any PIN code? Well, yes. And you have to enter some 8-digit numbers, but no matter what number you enter, the DDNS entry is updated. So I'm not sure if ASUS is aware of this flaw. But yeah, that was
it works.
My question. Did you make them aware of it?
We reported it to them, but they didn't really respond to that specific claim or report. So they are not really interested in fixing it.
Oh, that's too bad.
so
because I think
it's a total mess, I guess.
If that would be fixed, then the rest would not happen, right?
I think so, yes. So one of the issues of this attack is there's no authentication for the DDNS update. So
okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So maybe that's it. Thank you for listening.